What is going on, Solo fam? My name is John Solo, and unless you've been living in a completely different dimension this entire year, you've probably grown familiar with the concept of masks. Throughout the majority of 2020, we've had to wear them to keep ourselves and those around us from straight up dying. But in this episode of Messed Up Minute, I want to tell you about a kind of mask people throughout history used to put on after they died. Appropriately, it was called a death mask, and it came in all shapes and sizes. But that's because it was a custom-made wax or plaster mold of a specific person's face. A specific dead person, I mean. Okay, now let me back up a little bit because I know that's some heavy shit to hit you with in the first 40 seconds of the video. You see, before the 1800s, when cameras and photography were invented, there were only a few ways to accurately capture what someone looked like. You could paint them, you could sculpt them, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, most people couldn't afford those luxuries, so their existence is lost to the sands of time, but we're not talking about them. We're talking aristocrats and members of the royal family who wanted a way to preserve what they looked like just in case someone wanted to paint them or sculpt them after they died. And the most accurate way of doing that was by making a mold of their big dead face out of wax or plaster. Napoleon had a death mask made, so did Dante of Dante's Inferno. There's Sir Isaac Newton, who, not so fun fact, died of mercury poisoning, and Ben Franklin, also known as the horniest founding father. And who can forget Queen Mary I? Hers was actually made after she was beheaded. Isn't that fun? Now, there were a few other less egocentric reasons to have a death mask made. For example, some families wanted them as keepsakes, though I'm not sure why, because they're nightmare fuel. And then there were collectors who had just a little too much time and money that collected last likenesses and would buy death masks from families. But in my opinion, the most interesting purpose that death masks served was to give authorities a way to preserve the face of an unidentified corpse after they started to rot. And get this, if a person's face was damaged by their death, like in the case of Canadian politician Thomas McGee, who was shot in the face, they would take a mold of your hands. Now that's how death masks were used for the majority of recorded history. From the 5th century well into the 19th century, they were a pretty common practice among the wealthy elite. But prior to the 5th century, there were tribes and ancient peoples who made death masks for spiritual reasons. Like the Egyptians, who believed that being buried with the mask would guard your soul from evil spirits and help it find your body in the afterlife. In fact, the Mask of Tutankhamun, one of the most famous death masks of all time, served this exact purpose. But note that I said one of the most famous death masks of all time, because there's another that you may have seen at multiple points throughout your life without even realizing it. It belongs to a girl known only as the Unknown Woman of the Seine and the Beautiful Italian. The story goes that in the late 1880s, a young woman drowned in the Seine River in Paris, and a pathologist at the morgue thought her strangely calm expression was enchanting, so naturally, he decided to preserve it forever and make a plaster death mask out of it. For some reason or another, the mask became widely reproduced and was popular with artists and writers of that time, and apparently there were even young girls who tried to make themselves look like her. But the reason I say that you may have seen her face and not even realized it is that it was used as a model for Rescue Annie, a simulator doll that people practice CPR on. In fact, it's because of this that her face is referred to as the most kissed face of all time. It's not exactly a legacy that I would want to leave behind, but hey, it's a legacy. Also, I'm sad to report that the CPR doll that Dwight cut the face off of in The Office was not CPR Annie. Being that it's based on a real person's face, Dwight cutting it off and wearing it may have just been a little too morbid for NBC standards. But that'll do it for this episode of Messed Up Minute. Thank you all so much for stopping by today, and make sure you keep an eye out for our next episode about the art of death photography. Maybe that one will actually be a minute long. In the meantime, make sure you drop a like if you haven't already, subscribe for new messed up content in your sub box every week, and follow me on all the social medias to stay updated on channel news. I'll see you guys again next week on Messed Up Origins. Until that day comes, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.